Hello everyone, welcome back. Today we are doing a deck tech for the Mindskinner. The Mindskinner is a blue 10/1 legendary enchantment creature. It's a nightmare. It can't be blocked, and if a source you control would deal damage to an opponent, prevent that damage, and each opponent mills that many cards. Whew, this is some Voltron mill. So, why play the Mindskinner? He is a 3-mana 10/1, which is kind of crazy, and it's monocolor, so the blue is definitely awkward. However, it doesn't matter because we're monocolor. All of our lands are just mostly basics anyways. He's unblockable. We're always going to connect with this guy. He also hits each opponent when one is dealt damage. So basically what this means is we are in a 4-player pod. We have 3 opponents. We decide to hit person A, they can't block. Person A takes no damage, but since they would have taken 10 and that's now prevented, each opponent now mills 10 cards. So even though opponent A got hit, opponent B and C are also milling the 10. And then it's easy to Voltron out since it's already so strong anyways. We're not going for commander damage. Quite actually, commander damage is impossible, I believe, with this deck. So we're just trying to make this guy big and swing out and see if we can mill everyone. Here's the game plan. We need him. The deck does not function without him like it can. So the deck can function without him, but the whole game plan is relying on playing this guy, connecting, and then making everyone mill a bunch. Like, we have backup plans. They're just not as good. So early game, we want to drop our small equipment and our small utility stuff. Mid game, which is 3, is play the Mindskinner and hope it lives. I say that because usually Voltron decks are, when you have a Voltron commander, typically the commander has some kind of inherent protection. He doesn't, so we essentially need to make it so he can live a whole turn cycle without dying. So we got to leave up protection. We got to just either leave up protection like counter or straight up hope for the best. Late game, we got to protect it with counters, other little combat tricks, make it unbearably big by strengthening him up with equipment, auras, and all this fun stuff, and hopefully we're swinging out and then people are milling like 40. Channel and deck stuff, the deck is pricey. It's $450 or so at the making of this video. There are a lot of cards in this deck that you can cut, like examples like always like Ristic Study, cut Ristic Study, save yourself $40. Easy, make cuts as you need. So don't spend a lot on this video. Get the cards you need from the link down below if you do want any cards, or if the deck has inspired you or whatever. And remember to always like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Going into creatures, we don't have a lot. We have Bladed Agent. Bladed Agent and Callaphy are actually backup plans. So let's talk about them. Bladed Agent is unblockable and he has Infect. So here's the tricky thing, and Bladed Agent has Infect. He deals damage to creatures in the form of -1/-1 counters and players in the form of poison counters. That damage is prevented with Mindskinner, so it's kind of a non-bow. So I don't know if they get counters, actually. Someone let me know. But either way, he's kind of a backup plan if we don't have Mindskinner. That way we can just kill people easily with Infect. Callaphy, I'll talk about Brasquire in a second. Callaphy is also just kind of the backup plan. Power equaled number to our devotion to blue. So at the very worst, Callaphy is a 2/3 because we have 2 blue pips right there. And creatures and enchantments you control have ward 1. It's just they have ward 1. So it's good. Callaphy is also just good on the crackback. Either way, just because Callaphy will get big because we're a mono blue deck. Even having Callaphy and Mindskinner on the field is 15 damage. That is now people have to mill if they connect, which is cool. Brasquire just lets us attach target equipment you control to target creature we control at instant speed 2, which is very nice. This can be used for combat tricks. Honestly, we're probably just going to do it sorcery speed, just so we can have free equips. So if we have big equipment, right, we can just kind of slap it on there. Deadeye Quartermaster searches our deck for an equipment. We have no vehicles. Searches our deck for an equipment, straight up puts it into our hand. We have a lot of tutors in this deck, just because we want to make sure we have our stuff. Giggling Skitter Spike is so funny in this deck. Absolutely terrifying. Hold on, Toy Story vibes. Is an indestructible 1/1 for 4. When it attacks, blocks, or becomes the target of a spell, it deals damage equal to its power to each opponent, and it has Monstrosity 5. For for 5 mana, which Monstrosity 5 basically means pay 5 mana, put 5/1/1 counters on it. It's now considered monstrous. So the way this card works is ideally you make it monstrous, then you attack, it has 5 counters on it, and then it deals 6 damage to each opponent, which is cool. Now the interesting thing with this is when we have Mindskinner on the field. Since Mindskinner doesn't say combat damage, just says whenever a source you control deals damage to an opponent, they mill that many. So when Giggling Skitter Spike attacks, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but when he attacks, let's say each opponent takes 6 damage, there's now 3 instances of 6 damage being dealt to our opponents, meaning that each opponent would then mill 18, and then regular damage would occur, which would then cause each opponent to mill way more. So in my head, it's really good. It's really funny. Harbinger of the Seas, non-basic lands or islands. We are a monocolor deck, so we do not care. Hydroelectric Specimen is a land on the other side that can enter untapped, but I didn't want to put, I mean, it's just an MDFC, it's good. 3 mana, flash. When it enters the battlefield, you may change the target of target instant or sorcery with a single target to Hydroelectric Specimen. The idea is he takes one for the team, and by the team, I mean Mindskinner. So if someone tries to kill Mindskinner, right? Ideally, we could just say, all right, 3 mana, here's a 1/4. Your kill spell is now targeting Hydroelectric Specimen, and he took it like a champ. Invisible Stalker is really just there as another backup, or not even really like a backup. He can still kind of go good, or go nuts, because he is unblockable and naturally hexproof, so we can load him up to still have Mindskinner effects go crazy, and have him kind of be the big damage dealer, or even split the difference and have them both deal a lot of damage. It's still pretty good. Silent Arbiter, no more than 1 creature can attack each combat, no more than 1 creature can block each combat. They can't block anyways, which is nice. So the whole thing that's nice about him is we don't have like any creatures. We have maybe like 10 creatures or whatever it is. So when we swing out, we can't be taking the brunt on the crackback, you know? Yeah, we're making everyone mill 10, but we can't have them dealing that much damage back to us. And he's a great 1/5 blocker, which is even better. The final creatures are the mages, Tribute, Trinket, and Trophy. Tribute's going to search your deck for an artifact card with CMC 2. Trinket Mage is going to get a cost 1 or less, and Trophy Mage is going to get 3. It's basically just going to tutor up the best equipment or whatever we need in that moment. Trinket Mage is kind of cool, but I'll talk about Trinket Mage and some other funny stuff we can do in a little bit. Preordain, I decided to put just because it's good card draw. It's good setting up, even because the thing is we kind of need to hold our mana back, right? These are our only sorceries, only 3 sorceries, because we need to hold our mana back because we need to have instant speed interaction, because when Mindskinner has no protection, we if we don't have anything giving it hexproof or indestructible or whatever, we need to make sure that we're holding mana back to be able to do that. And since we're playing mono blue, we need to make our opponents think that we have the mana and stuff to do that. So Preordained is a nice casual 1 mana scry 2 draw card, so we can kind of figure out what we need, get set up, draw more interaction, or ways to make Mindskinner bigger. Spectral Deluge is really good. During our turn, you may pay 2 mana to foretell it, pay 2 mana and exile this card from our hand face down, and we can cast it on a later turn for its foretell cost, which will then be 1 blue, which then return each creature your opponents control with toughness X or less to its under hand, where X is the number of islands we control. We are a mono blue deck. This is basically a one-sided board wipe. Thoughtcast is nice just because we have 30 artifacts, not including any artifact creatures, just straight up 30 artifacts. So ideally, we're just paying 1 mana to draw 2 cards, which is pretty good. Going into instance, we have Counterspell to counter a spell, Cyclonic Rift because it's a good one-sided board wipe. We have Dive Down, which is nice because it gives Mindskinner +0 and +3 and hexproof. This is kind of important. So one, this is really in the deck for things that are like, one, it's to give hexproof, which is good. If someone wants to kill spell, counter it essentially by giving it hexproof. But if someone has an effect that's like deal like 2 damage to each creature, or deal 1 damage to each creature, Mindskinner is a 10/1 for some reason, for one toughness. So if someone does that kind of effect, it's nice to at least be like, oh cool, like it's now at least a 10-4 to kind of mitigate any of that. I play Burn. It's pretty good. Fierce Guardianship, because we're always going to have Mindskinner on the field. It's a free counter spell. Frantic Search is good just because in a pinch, it's basically free. It's a free spell, practically. Draw 2 cards, then discard 2 cards, untap up to 3 lands, which is nice because it's going to help us figure stuff out. If we're in a pinch, if we don't have any interaction or whatever, we can do it whenever, untap lands. We have Nykthos, we could even ramp with it potentially. But yeah, draw 2 cards, discard 2 cards. We filter our hand basically for free. Fumble might not be the best card, but it's definitely one of the funniest cards in this deck. Return target creature to its owner's hand. So at the very worst, it's a bounce spell. It's not, I mean, at the very worst, it's a bounce spell. Gain control of all auras and equipment that were attached to that creature, and then attach them to another creature. And we're attaching them all to Mindskinner. And I think that's really funny that this big nightmare just, like, picked up someone's, like, fumble. I know that's like a sword, but I think of, like, a football, and I think that's really silly. We have Keep Safe, counter target spell that targets a permanent you control, and then we draw a card. That's basically any of the effects. Like, essentially, Negate and Keep Safe are practically the same card if an opponent's trying to kill our thing, and we draw a card out of it. Like, Negate's really there for someone trying to wipe the board, someone trying to kill Mindskinner, so functionally in this deck they work the same, and Keep Safe gets to draw us a card. Negate, although it's better Keep Safe, definitely, it's just to make sure we can counter something our opponent does that we don't like. Like, we have a lot of ways to protect Mindskinner, but if someone wipes the board with like a big board wipe, we might have a little bit of difficulty, so we got to make sure we have counter spells like Negate up. Pongify is good. Pop a creature we don't like. They can have a 3/3, can't block anyways. It's just tricky because we need to be able, like, our opponents aren't killing Mindskinner by damaging it with their creatures. It's unblockable, so they're probably not doing that. But if an opponent has a good value creature, we got to get rid of it. 3/3s don't matter. Rapid Hybridization is the same exact logic. Sink into the Stupor is a land on the other side, and then we can return a spell or non-land permanent an opponent controls to their hand. So it's either a bounce spell or a remand with a land stapled onto the back of it. Slip Out the Back is good for when an opponent does cast a board wipe. It phases out, right? Which means treat it and anything attached to it as though they don't exist until its controller's next turn. And we also put a 1 counter on it, so now it's an 11-2, which makes each opponent mill 1 more. It's good. Someone wipes the board, we can't do much about it. Even if someone tries to kill it, whatever, it's phased out. It's fine. At the very, very worst someone can do with this is we go to combat, we have no other protection, they try to kill Mindskinner, we phase it out, we lose a combat, and we put a 1/1 counter on it. That's the worst case scenario. We have Strix Serenade, counter target artifact, creature, or planeswalker spell. They can have a 2/2 bird. That's fine. It's basically just what's that other spell? What's the other spell that's basically exactly this? Swan Song. It's basically Swan Song. And we also, oh my god, I'm stupid. I wasn't looking at it at all. There's also Swan Song. I'm literally staring at both cards, but I wasn't looking at Swan Song, and I'm like, why can't I remember this? Yeah, they're basically the same thing, except opposites. So Strix Serenade hits artifacts, creatures, or planeswalkers. Swan Song hits enchantments, instants, and sorceries. Do what you will with that. It's good either way. We are a blue deck, so we have a lot of counter magic. Going into the big meat and cheese of it are the artifacts. We do have some enchantments that will help us, but they're more utility. But the artifacts are how we win. We win by putting these equipment onto Mindskinner. So, Arcane Signet, it's just good ramp. That's really it. We're mono blue. We don't have a ton of ramp. Bitterthorn is good. It has Living Weapon. It gets +1/+1. So this is essentially a 3-mana 1/1. Well, it's actually a 0/0. It comes with a 0/0 germ. And then since it gets +1/+1, it's practically a 1/1. Then whenever the equipped creature attacks, search our deck for a basic land, put it onto the battlefield. That's good ramp for us. If this little thing dies, that's fine. We do get the land on attack, which is very relevant. So even like if it dies, it's fine. We don't really care if the thing dies. We want it to give us ramp, and then eventually we're going to put this equipment onto Mindskinner. Blackblade Reforged is big, and it's also actually a good combo with Bitterthorn. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each land you control. We can equip 7 for any creature, which is bad, but we can equip a legendary creature for 3, which is the Mindskinner, which is pretty good. So ideally, it gets better the more and more we go. Eventually, even like in a bad game, if we're stuck on 6 lands for whatever, it's like, okay, well, it gets +6/+6. Everyone's now milling 16 when we connect. It's very cool, though, when Bitterthorn and Blackblade are on the field. So we go to combat, say both of them are on the field, we attack. Blackblade is equipped to whatever. Bitterthorn gets it on attack, then the land comes in. Blackblade now has an extra land to count for, so we're dealing 1 extra damage, which is kind of cool. Brass Knuckles, when you cast it, copy it. Equipped creature has double strike as long as there are 2 or more equipment attached to it. And it has equip 1, which is really good because we're an equipment deck and we're almost always going to have equipment on it. So it's basically very cheap double strike, which is good. And again, double strike is we're now dealing damage twice. So even like in a vacuum, we have Mindskinner and Brass Knuckles. We're now dealing 20 damage. 20 potential damage, which is now each opponent milling a fifth of their deck. We have Commander's Plate. Mindskinner gets +3/+3 and has protection from every color but blue, which is really good. So our opponents can't interact with it really anymore. They can't target it. They can still blow it up with nukes and stuff. Equip Commander for 3, which is great, and equip anything else for 5. It's basically Blackblade Reforged. Fire Shrieker, short, sweet, to the point. Equipped creature has double strike. Equip 2, wonderful. Having double strike is very, very good in this deck because it's going to make our game plan twice as fast. Hammer of Nazan enters the battlefield. We may attach it basically to Hammer of Nazan or another equipment enter the battlefield. We attach it to the Mindskinner for free, and then it's going to give the Mindskinner +2/+0 and Indestructible, which is really, really good. And then again, everything else is a free equip. Inquisitor's Flail. If equipped creature would deal combat damage, it deals double that damage. So that's essentially now 20 cards being milled. Well, actually, I don't know. Is the damage prevented? I wonder if someone has to double. This is a tricky video. Someone's going to have to fact check me on a good chunk of this. So the way I interpret this is Mindskinner would deal 20 or 10 damage, which would then be doubled to 20. And then if a creature would deal combat damage to the equipped creature, it deals double damage. It doesn't matter because it's a 10-1. It's going to die to a slight breeze. Loxodon Warhammer, +3/+0, trample, lifelink. Trample, not relevant to Mindskinner. However, lifelink is. When we are attacking with a 10-1 as our main creature, we're on the offensive constantly. So basically, we need to be able to gain a lot of life to make up for it. Like, we're kind of on the, like, go nuts plan. Like, live fast, die young plan. We're either milling people out, or we're dying to them. But having lifelink will gain us, at the very worst, 13 a turn. Which is pretty good. Masterwork of Ingenuity is great, just because it's going to enter as a copy of any equipment on the battlefield. Whatever our best thing is, we now have 2 of them. And we actually haven't probably seen any of our best equipment yet. We have Mirror Shield to give it hexproof and +0/+2, so now Mindskinner is just a 10-3 with hexproof, and then if it would be, whenever a creature with Death Touch blocks or becomes blocked by this creature, destroy it. Nothing's blocking it, but if, let's say, we give Mirror Shield to Mindskinner, and then someone attacks with a Death Touch creature, and we also have Mindskinner has Vigilance or whatever, we could go block that creature, and if it had Death Touch, it would just die right away. Mithril Coat is great. Flash Indestructible. When it enters the battlefield, attach it to target Mindskinner. Mindskinner has Indestructible, and equip 3 if it falls off somehow later. Again, just a cheeky little someone wipes the board. Nettle Cyst has Living Weapon. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each artifact and/or enchantment you control. So in a vacuum, Nettle Cyst is a 3-mana 1/1. And then it gets bigger and bigger and bigger as the game goes on. We slap this bad boy onto Mindskinner, which is relevant because Mindskinner is an enchantment. So even if it's just Mindskinner and enchantment, it's +2/+2, which is good. Sapphire Medallion, we are a mono blue deck, albeit most of our cards are colorless, or at least a third of our cards are colorless. It still is a cost reducer because we do not have a ton of ramp options in blue. Shadow Sphere is also great. Trample, not relevant. However, Lifelink is relevant, and the +1/+1 is good. Permanent your opponents control lose hexproof and indestructible until end of turn, which is great. It's just kind of added benefit if, let's say, we need to Pongify something with, like, I don't know, hexproof or indestructible. We can kill a god with a Shadow Spear, literally what it's made for. But yeah, no, just the +1/+1 and lifelink is great. So we're swinging in for 11, gaining 11. Soul Ring is Soul Ring. Swiftfoot Boots to give the Mindskinner hexproof and haste, so it permanently has hexproof so no one can target it, and it can attack right away. Sword of Feast and Famine, probably the best equipment in our deck. Arguably, just the best equipment. 3 mana, pro black and green, so kind of hexproof and just, hexproof and black and green, not like anyone can block anyways. When equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, that player discards a card, and then we untap all of our lands. So we basically can kind of go nuts on our main phase 1, and then we can go to combat, hit someone for 12 with Sword of Feast and Famine on the Mindskinner, and then we untap all of our lands. It's always going to get through because Mindskinner, again, is unblockable. And even if the Mindskinner plan isn't online, we still give it to one of our other dinguses, and it's still pro black and green, so it'll still probably get through. A lot of swords. Sword of Fortune Frontier, pro red and green. When it deals combat damage to a player, exile the top 2 cards of our library. It's basically card draw. You may play those cards this turn, and then we can play an additional land, which is ramp. Sword of Hearth and Home, pro white and green, +2/+2. Whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, exile up to 1 creature you own, then search your library for a basic land card, and then put both cards onto the battlefield under our control. Blink a creature, ramp. Not a ton of relevant creatures to blink, however. We have the mages, the trophy, trinket, and tribute mage. We can blink to get more things. Worst case, we're just ramping. And then with this Sword of Sinew and Steel, which is a little bit bigger because I can't edit things right. Pro black and red, +2/+2. Whenever equipped creature does combat damage to a player, destroy up to 1 target planeswalker and 1 target artifact. Because we're not attacking planeswalkers ever. We're not doing that. Doesn't exist in this deck. Sword of Sinew and Steel will pop planeswalkers. Yeah, it's just good. Get rid of troublesome artifacts. The cool thing about all of these swords of blank and blank is that we are already unblockable, so these effects are hitting everything all at once. Then we'll go to Sword of the Animist, +1/+1. It has the whole Bitterthorn thing. When it attacks, search your deck for a basic land, put it on the battlefield tapped. We're ramping. Sword of Vengeance, +2/+0. First strike, trample, vigilance, and haste, which is very good. Even just giving it vigilance is really good. And then Sword of War and Peace, pro red and white, +2/+2. Whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, Sword of War and Peace deals damage to that player equal to the number of cards in their hand, and we gain a life for each card in ours. Here's the cool thing. We attack, let's say they take 12, right? If the opponent has 5 cards in their hand, they take 5. Since they took 5 damage from one of our sources, because Sword of War and Peace is dealing that damage, now everyone mills an additional 5. We have the Ironcrag. It's just small ramp, and then whenever a legendary creature enters the battlefield, we may have the Ironcrag basically just be +3/+3 and lose all other abilities. We probably don't want to do that. This is kind of on the idea of we are off of the Mindskinner plan. Say we just can't cast it or whatever. It can just be an equipment if we want it to. It's not that great, but it's still cheap ramp. Key to the Vault is very cool. When a equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, look that many cards from the top of your library. You may exile a non-land card from them, put the rest on the bottom, and then we can cast the exile card without paying its mana cost. When we attack, if we just have this in the Mindskinner, we're looking at the top 10 cards of our library and playing one for free. That's it. Top 10, play one for free. And then as we get bigger and bigger, we get more equipment onto the Mindskinner. We're going to be like looking at the top 20 cards of our deck and then playing one for free. Thought Vessel is just good ramp. No max hand size because we can draw a decent amount. Thran Power Suit, +1/+1 for each aura and equipment attached to it, and it has Ward 2, so at the very worst, it's just Ward 2 and +1/+1, which is still fine. Wayfarer's Bauble, maybe not necessary in this deck, but there is just really no good ramp options in blue, so just searching our deck for a basic land, put it on battlefield tapped, it's fine, no big deal. Winged Boots is cool. Flying and Ward 4, equip 1. That's great. Ward 4 basically says hexproof. I'm going to be honest, anything really Ward 3 and up is practically hexproof. Going into enchantments, we have back to basics. Non-basic lands don't untap during their controller's untap step. We are monocolored decked. We do not really care about non-basic lands. We do have a couple, so it is a bit of a non-bow, but our opponents are really going to be punished. Curator's War to give Mindskinner hexproof, and then when enchanted permanent leaves the battlefield, if it was historic, draw 2 cards, and it is historic because it's legendary. So Curator's Ward is nice because it gives Mindskinner hexproof, which is already good, and then let's say something goes wrong, right? We're at least drawing 2 cards out of it, which is not bad. We have Eel Umbra, flash, enchant creature gets +1/+1, and it has totem armor. If enchanted creature would be destroyed, instead remove all damage from it and destroy this aura. So someone decides to wipe the board. We can flash out Eel Umbra, toss it onto Mindskinner. Since it has totem armor, Eel Umbra is destroyed. So it's good because if someone tries to destroy it or kill it or whatever, somehow they deal it with damage, Eel Umbra is going to just go away and take one for the team, which is great. If Eel Umbra doesn't go away, for whatever reason, and we just want to put it on the Mindskinner as just protection whenever, still +1/+1. We have Nerd Rage because Mindskinner's a big nerd. Enters the battlefield, draw 2 cards, which is already pretty good. And enchanted creature you have no maximum hand size. And whenever this creature attacks, if you have 10 or more cards in hand, it gets +10/+10 until end of turn. I don't think that's going to happen very often. It's nice to have no max hand size. It's nice to draw 2 cards. But if we have a bunch of cards in our hand, a 20-11 attacker is pretty good when our opponents are milling a fifth of their deck. Propaganda is just good because even though we are very aggro, we do not want our opponents to be aggro to us. We have no creatures that can really block it, so we want them to at least be taxed. Rhystic Study, whenever an opponent casts a spell, we can draw a card unless they pay 1. Hopefully, maybe that'll enable Nerd Rage. We never know. And then finally, we have Vanishing. Easy aura to slap on Mindskinner. Just enchanted creature phases out. It's pretty short, sweet, to the point. Someone does something we don't like, we could always just pay 2 to phase it out, which is nice. Going into non-basic lands, which is a bit of a non-bow with back to basics, but it's fine. Academy of Ruins is good. Taps for a colorless. Put target artifact card from your graveyard on top of our library, which is great. Let's say someone blows up one of our things. We want to get it back. Put it on top. Draw it for turn. Archway of Innovation enters tapped unless we control an island. We're mono blue. Then we can tap it. The next spell you cast this turn has Improvise, so your artifacts can help pay the cost by tapping it. So the cool thing about this is we can just tap our equipment because it doesn't really matter too much it doesn't matter at all if our equipment are tapped or not. So we can essentially just pay a blue and then tap it to make all of our equipment be mana dorks. Cathedral War enters tapped, but it has Exalted. Whenever a creature you control attacks alone, the creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn. Then we can tap it for a mana. Cathedral War is cool because now when Mindskinner attacks, at the very worst, it's now an 11/2, which is a little bit more damage just for free on the land. Cavern of Souls enters the battlefield. We're going to say Nightmare. It's the only Nightmare in the deck, but we do not want our commander to be countered. We just don't want to do that. So yeah, it just makes it uncounterable. Nykthos, because we're mono blue, we have one other thing on the field other than Mindskinner, and Nykthos now taps positively. Otawara is good because since Mindskinner's on the field, it's just going to cost 3. We can bounce something really easy or just simply play it as a land, whatever we need. Seat of the Synod is in the deck. One, because it helps with all of the stuff we have, say like Nettle Assist, where it's like, oh, creature gets +X+X, where X is the number of artifacts you control. It's going to count this. Additionally, as I mentioned earlier, Trinket Mage. Trinket Mage enters the battlefield and it searches your deck for an artifact card with mana value 1 or less. Seat of the Synod is an artifact with mana value 0 because it's a land, so we can effectively tutor up a land. War Room is cool. Pay 3 mana. Pay life equal the number of colors in our commander's color identity, which is 1. So 3 mana, pay a life, draw a card. Witch's Clinic. Target commander gains lifelink until end of turn. Very, very cool. It's also a very interesting political piece too, because we don't care if our opponents are at 1,000,000 life. Doesn't matter. All that matters is that they have no cards in their deck. That's all that matters. So it's a fun political piece. We can give our own thing. Lifelink to gain a bunch. Pretty cool. And then we have 24 basics. You can adjust this as you choose. Take out some of the non-basics I added or whatever. It's still fine. We have 35 lands, I believe, counting MDFCs, which should be no worries because we're generally a pretty low-costed deck. Everything costs about 3 mana, which is good. Thank you guys for watching. Get the cards you need from the link down below. Like, comment, and always subscribe. And I will see you guys next time.